So welcome to week 2 of Think Again, right? We're in the midst of our book study, Think Again by Adam Grant. And week 2, we are looking at, the joy of being wrong. Anybody in here relate to that being perhaps a challenge sometimes? To actually embrace the joy that we are wrong. So I don't know what happened for you guys on Monday morning, but I woke up on Monday morning, which is my day off. So if I don't get back to you on Mondays, that's why. I woke up on Monday morning and I jumped on TikTok, because that's what I do. And my For You page was filled with something. And what it was filled with were responses to the Little Mermaid. Right? So for those of you who don't know, Halle Bailey is playing the mermaid, Ariel, in the live action Disney. And this was announced 3 years ago. And yet from some of the vitriol that has been coming at her and at Disney and at other David Diggs as well, you would think that nobody knew this was going to happen. All right? What I woke up to, because my For You page, I'm on the, we're going to talk about right and wrong, I'm on the right side of TikTok, right? But what my For You page was filled with that morning, and I literally just sat there crying, was mothers and fathers and grandparents and caregivers to little black girls up to adult black women responding to their first look at the trailer, right? And Disney set it up in such a way that in the beginning of the trailer, all you see is like her little fins, and you don't see anything until the very, very end of the trailer. And in that moment, you see this image come on. And so what I'm going to play for you right now is a video from TikTok that has a compilation of some of these reactions that people posted for their children. Oh, but we need the music for this. Zach, can you figure out how to make that music, the sound work on that? While he's doing that, I will fill space. But I should have told him I was doing that. He didn't have a heads up, so it's on me. I'm sorry? Was I wrong? Yes, I was wrong. Look at the joy I'm feeling right now. In front of how many people am I wrong? Are we good, Zach? This is the moment they see her. The vitriol that they've been experiencing coming at them, literally people have been saying, it's a classic. How can you mess with a classic? Right? People have been saying that Hans Christian Andersen was not of color. So how could The Little Mermaid, it's a mermaid, be of color? David Diggs is playing a crab, and people are upset because the crab is of color. I really want everybody to really take this in, right? this is what we're all being invited into, is rethinking things that we think are classics, rethinking the things that are so near and dear to our hearts. People are upset because they grew up with The Little Mermaid. And it's horrifying to them that the construct that they created in their mind is somehow being transformed in a way which, quite honestly, every time I watch that, it chokes me up. We need to be rethinking again on every level of our culture, but particularly when it comes to race, right? Particularly when it comes to race. And what's fascinating to me is that the people who are responding like that, in terms of that it's a classic, Hans Christian Andersen wasn't of color, right? There aren't black people in Denmark, right? I mean, all of that sort of argument, right? None of them actually approached it the way that Adam Grant is inviting us to approach things, which is scientifically. Which is, let me try to gather evidence. What is actually happening? And if you do a little bit of digging around, the internet is a wonderful thing. If you do a little bit of digging around, you will discover that Hans Christian Andersen, closeted gay man, who wrote The Little Mermaid as an allegory for his own pain and suffering because he was in love with a married man. He wrote a letter to the guy and said, I love you and adore you like a woman, and we can't do this. And he sent him the manuscript for The Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid in the original doesn't have her voice beautifully get lifted out of her, it gets ripped out of her throat. The Little Mermaid in the original, when she transforms, it's like knives in her body. Every step that she takes is like stepping on knives. That is the classic that everyone is trying to defend. Disney's version, original version, way back when, how old is that? The Ariel? I mean, it's old, right? That version of the story has somehow become the story. And here we have people rethinking, reimagining what is actually present in our world. So my invitation to all of you is, I love this quote. So I am taking, as a student, right, Cindy Acker's Getting Real with Race, and she's combining it with the book study. And this quote came from some of the supplemental reading that she sent us for the class. An open mind might be the essential ingredient to engage in a dialogue about race in America. If the gut response is to deny the existence of the problem, the conversation never happens. The answer has been marked and won't be changed. Now, in the books that we've been reading, there's a whole study in there about how when kids take tests and how they go with their first answer, and they're told by all the experts, don't change your first answer because it's almost always going to be right. And yet the studies have proven what? It's actually not right. That they do much better when they change their answer when they go back through to whatever they think it might be the second time around. They're much more likely to get it right then. So where are you so fixed? Because those people out there who are sending vitriol to that beautiful, beautiful woman who's playing Ariel are stuck on an answer that is old. But they're not alone in that. We all do that. We are all doing that right now. We are all somehow stuck on something that we think is a classic, that we think is the way it's supposed to be. And the invitation in this book is to just keep opening ourselves up again and again and again and again and again. And how Adam Grant suggests that we do this is through something he calls confident humility, which I love that, right? Confident humility, where you are being invited to welcome in the vulnerability. You are being invited to release the pride, the ego, and you are being invited to focus on growth. Now, when we focus on growth, having a black Ariel, I mean, she's a mermaid. But even if she wasn't a mermaid, I mean, I'm stuck on that, but even if she wasn't a mermaid, Why is it such a shocking thing to have somebody whose skin color is different play a vital and important archetypal role in society? You saw those little girls, right? And if you watch all of the videos of all of them, they're just like, it's Ariel. That one little girl, she says at one point, the minute Ariel starts singing and you still can't see her, she looks at her mother and she goes, oh, I think she's brown. I think she's brown like me. And it's cute because they're little. So they're also saying things which I love, like, that's the real Ariel. Which I love, right? The real Ariel is brown. The real Ariel has dreads. The real Ariel, right? I mean, it's just such a beautiful thing. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this next week, how this kind of seeing someone as a rival or seeing someone comes out of a sense of lack. And we're going to talk more about this next week. So what's happening for these people who have struggled with the fact that Ariel is a black mermaid as opposed to a white mermaid. Still gets me, you guys. They feel like they're losing something. They feel like something is being taken away from them. Now, the truth of privilege is that when you have so much, you just take it for granted. You think that that is it. And then someone comes along and says, I also get a piece of this. I also have a voice at the table. I also am present here. And instead of understanding, because the spiritual principle behind all of this is that there is always more room. There's enough room for a black Ariel, there's enough room for a white Ariel, there's enough room for an Asian Ariel, there's enough room for a gay merman, right? There's enough room for all of that. When we get caught in the idea that there isn't enough, that's when we get trapped in our own fears, in our own worries, in our own story, and somebody becomes the enemy. So what we can cultivate is this idea of confident humility. And what it means is that we have to be present to ourselves. So last week we talked about the preacher, the prosecutor, and the politician, right? And I know that those may be traditionally male archetypes, but AOC would probably disagree with a lot of that, right? But what we're looking at is the mindset behind those archetypes. Right? So we're looking at the mindset, because everything we're doing with his book, I'm going to say this again and again and again, is we are taking something that has been written for a secular community, and we are looking at it as a community through a spiritual prism. So the preacher is, I am right. I am right. How many people in here have had that experience this week? I am right. How many people in here have been the prosecutor? You are wrong. And then how many people in here, and this is where my people pleasers, right? Y'all are politicians in the making, right? Are telling people what they want to hear so that they will support you. However that looks. Oh, I'll raise my hand to that, right? Right? So the goal is to just watch yourself. Watch yourself. Am I like, no, I'm right. Why are you, like, the minute you see yourself falling into that, you're being invited to step into confident humility. Now, Adam Grant talks about the confidence sweet spot. And this is based on the idea that along one axis, you have the belief in yourself. And along the other axis, you have the belief in your tools. And we already talked about how we get very attached to our tools. Right? The firemen from the story, and how we sometimes carry them and use them even if they're not serving us, they're actually impeding us. So if you look at this chart, if you are insecure about the belief you have in yourself, and if you are also uncertain about your tools, then you find yourself experiencing debilitating doubt. If you are insecure about yourself, but you are certain about your tools, then you are obsessive in your sense of inferiority. right? Because you don't feel good about yourself, but you have the tools, and the tools are what you're going to work. If you are secure in yourself, but you are certain about your beliefs, I love this one. You are blind and arrogant. The sweet spot is being secure about yourself, but uncertain about your beliefs. So, how does that translate for a spiritual community where what we always say is that your faith is the rock upon which we stand? How do we reconcile this idea that we're supposed to, according to Adam Grant, and believe me, there's lots of things that he is also not right about, right? According to him, this idea that we want to welcome in uncertainty into our tools. There's a difference, right? Between uncertain about our tools and being uncertain about our values. They are not the same thing, right? And he goes on to talk about that we are being invited to detach our present from our past, and we are being invited to, and this is the big one, our opinions from our identity. Can we let go of our opinions, which we often say the fact is, when it actually is just our opinion about something? Remember last week I talked about the I don't have a bias, right? I know the facts are, is immediately saying, I don't have a bias here. But don't you? Don't we all have a bias? Remember, we can't take ourselves out of the picture. So what happens if we actually divest our opinions from our identity? What are we left with? If all we have done to understand who we are is think it's about our opinions and our beliefs, then we are going to be in trouble if we're trying to shift and change. So what Adam Grant suggests is that we should, who you are should be a question of what you value, not what you believe. This, to me, is all about our spiritual principles. The values that, how I translate what he is speaking to, is the values are our spiritual principles. They are love, compassion, joy, beauty, harmony. If you live your life knowing that it is what you value in this world rather than what you believe about something, then it gives you the opportunity to see those same values in other people. Whichever side of the spectrum you might be, wherever you fall on the spectrum that is abortion, it's a tough one, right? And in that space, I bet if we could actually come together around values rather than opinions, we would find that there is a lot more common ground. There is a lot more agreement than what you would think by looking at the polarity that is going on in the world today. So we, as spiritual seekers, are being invited to step into this idea of living from our values, not from our beliefs. Because if our values are the constant, then we can shift our opinion and we don't feel as if we're somehow wishy-washy. Our foundation is still strong, but it allows us to be responsive. It allows us to actually be fully present to what is happening in the world. We don't have to shut anybody out. If we are living and breathing and moving from our values, this to me is what it means to live an awakened life. This is a part of our mission vision, to live an awakened life. How do we do that? Well, for me, it begins with acknowledging what our values are. And from that place of value, we can begin to look for where those values are mirrored back at us in other people. Remember, what we look for, we will see. If we're looking for the polarity, if we're looking for the discord, guess what? That is what you are going to see. Adam Grant says this, and I really do love this: the brighter you are, the harder it can be to see your own limitations. Being good at thinking can make you worse at rethinking. Amen. Right? So, one of the traps that we fall into is that education, being educated, being intellectual, having a grasp of complex issues somehow means that we have the right answer. And what Adam Grant is inviting us into is that place of confident humility where I have belief in my values, what I value. One of my values is curiosity. That is something I value. I am always looking to live into curiosity. I am looking for others who are curious. And as I engage in curiosity, that means that I can actually change my opinion. I can actually grow. I don't take what other people tell me at face value. I do my own discovery. So I watched on TikTok a woman who went into the Hans Christian Andersen and the whole gay thing and the whole thing, and I was like, that's so cool. And then I thought, I got to be a scientist about this. Because is it just something that is agreeing with a belief that I have? So let me go and do the research. And there it was, right? The letter that he wrote to this man and the fact that he sent him a copy of the manuscript at the same time. It's like, okay, that to me means that something is falling into place that isn't just about my bias. Because I know I have a bias, right? I was crying as those little black girls were saying, Mama, she's brown like me. I know I have a bias. So, what if it was fun to be wrong? Just go with me here for a minute, right? What if it was actually fun to be wrong? What if being wrong means that you get to have an aha moment? What if being wrong means that you get to be creative in that moment? What if being wrong means that you get to discover something new about yourself or about the world or about how people are being perceived? What if being wrong is not something that we beat ourselves up about? But what if being wrong is actually the gateway into freedom? Just take a moment and think about what it would be like if you actually weren't afraid of being wrong. What would you try? What would you explore? What would you possibly step out into if you weren't afraid that it was wrong or bad or whatever that judgment is? Who would you be in the world if being wrong was an opportunity to grow and expand? Now, he presents a study with entrepreneurs in Italy, and they trained half of the entrepreneurs to do the scientific theory, and they trained the other half to just, put their project forward, whatever their pet baby project was that they were going to launch. And at the end of that study, what they discovered is that the people who were trained in scientific, does it work, doesn't work, let's change it, let's twist it, how can we make it work better, what's not working here, oh, I was wrong, how can I shift? Those people in that control group were so much more successful than the people who were stuck in one idea. No matter how good that idea was, they were stuck in it. So as new data was coming in, as new information was coming in, as they weren't paying attention to it. So where are you not willing to have a new thought? Because it is too sacrosanct, whatever that is for you? Is what you hold near and dear an opinion, or is it actually a value? Because if it's a value, then you can walk through life anchoring that value no matter what is going on around you. You can be the value. And that's what we are being invited into with Think Again. It's an open growth loop. We are looking to move out of this closed loop where everything that we think we know, we look for, and because we're looking for it, we see it, which reinforces the fact that, oh, it's right, which means we keep looking for it, which means we keep seeing it, which means we become even more entrenched in, I know it's right, because I've seen the evidence all around me. What we want to do is disrupt that loop and enter into a growth, a regenerative cycle. And you can think of it more as a spiral rather than a loop, where you are continually moving outward. And it requires curiosity, investigation. It asks you to step out of your comfort zone. One of the other pieces that he talks about in these chapters is the idea that you walk a mile in somebody else's shoes, that doesn't work. That doesn't shift people. That doesn't change their understanding, because they're walking a mile in somebody else's shoes from their fixed opinion. So it doesn't actually shift anything. Instead, what he's inviting us into is what he calls perspective taking, where we engage in dialogue, where we go, and here's the big thing, folks, Google it. Right? There is so much information out there if you spend a little bit of time exploring. I have talked about how amazing BIPOC TikTok is in terms of opening up your mind to being able to see what's alive, what is actually happening in the world that goes beyond my little white sphere of understanding. Continually invite yourself to step into that larger picture. And allow that new information to actually land on you. You could feel it with those little girls, right? Ariel is brown, she looks like me. I can't even imagine what it must be like growing up with no representation of myself. Being strong. I mean, really. The gift of being able to see yourself. So that is perspective. Can you feel how I'm taking a perspective on that? That is what I'm inviting all of you into, because if we're not willing to do that, then we're just going to stay stuck, right? Our culture is going to stay stuck. And it's not up to somebody else to do it, and it sure isn't up to the BIPOC community to do it. Because we are the ones who are holding the beliefs about them, right? So we are the ones that have to shift. We are the ones that have to move. We are the ones that have to invite ourselves, because what happens when we do it for ourselves? It happens everywhere. It happens absolutely everywhere. So as I sat and cried watching those little brown girls see themselves in a movie, right? As I sat there crying, within 24 hours, my For You page was filled with people crying on camera, saying, "Have you seen these? Have you watched these? Have you heard this?" Because it's not just happening in one place, it's happening everywhere. And we have to be vulnerable to it. We have to let it land. My tears were of joy, but they were also of pain. That these little girls were so shocked. Their faces were shocked to actually see themselves like that. That's painful when we really sit with it. But we, as a spiritual community, have the capacity to hold that in love. We can hold ourselves in love. We can hold those little girls in love. We can hold their mothers in love. All those mothers and fathers are filming their kids, knowing what a momentous moment this was, understanding the importance of this moment, and then sharing it with the world so that we can have a perspective taking that allows us to shift and to grow. This is what's going to allow us to move beyond us and them. And it starts right here. It starts with us. It doesn't start anywhere else. We have to be willing to do the work. So, as we step into this work, we're invited to anchor ourselves in what we value. Anchor yourself in love. Anchor yourself in peace and joy and compassion. If you discover that you had something that you thought or believed or understood, you come to realize that it's in error, that it is wrong. can you be joyful about it? One of the people in these chapters talks about how they now actively look for where they're wrong because they don't want to keep being wrong. Like, they don't want to keep perpetuating that. So they're looking for it so that they can shift, so that they can do something better. They can do something more in aligned with their values. So rather than getting fixated on what we did wrong, we use it to grow and to evolve. And this is what allows us to look for the places that we have in common, right? We have more in common than we have differences. But you would never know it by looking at this world. But we actually have much more in common. And that is what we are being invited to rethink for ourselves. How can we anchor this for the world? So I'm going to invite Deborah Winters to come on up here. I want everyone to take a breath with me. Because this is a lot. This is like where it gets real, right? Where the rubber meets the road. That's what we're here for. I mean, that's what I'm here for, right? I'm here for where the rubber meets the road. That's what I'm here for. So, affirmations. I am here for where the rubber meets the road. Okay, let's try that again. I am here for where the rubber meets the road. I live from what I value. I release my opinions. I am willing to rethink and be made new. And so it is. Amen. Ashe.